My main goal is to blow up and then act like I don't know nobody.
The year is 1793. The world begins to simultaneously experience large tremors from all around them. Strange, mystical gateways begin to open up all across the world. In the US, many Americans believe it to be a sign from the heavens and name the event God's Expanse. But on the night of January 24th, 1794, calamity strikes. Unspeakable horrors begin to pour out from the portals, decimating the surrounding lands. Thousands of American lives are slaughtered by the ensuing supernatural beast. The territories these portals open in have since become forbidden regions, where death and destruction roam untested. These lands have since been named the Pharaohs. It was soon realized that the portals held not only terrors, but also a collection of odd but intelligent races. Human folktales dating back generations were no longer just stories. Commonly referred to as strangers, these numerous species lacked any distinct memories of their original homelands. Wherever they could, the strangers would seek haven in any place it could be found. However, it was soon apparent that many American colonists wouldn't be very fond of cohabitation. With the introduction of the strangers came a mysterious plant known as portal lilies. Valued even higher than gold, these lilies made people stronger, more resilient than most. The flower's effects on a few select people gave them newfound powers. Now, a man could easily dodge a bullet, crush boulders with their bare hands, or even gaining access to the sorcery of the strangers. But even to this day, the extent of the power of these plants is poorly documented. These powered individuals came to be known as Sazis, a term most people picked up from the Navajo word Anasazis. Over the years, there would be many conflicts and skirmishes between Americans and the strangers. One notable event would be the War of 1812, which would be one of the first times that a group of strangers would make their mark on American history. The burning of Washington would lead a Nome settler named Saren Penbin to lead a group of his people to defend American soil after the death of his son. Their technological prowess and magical knowledge allowed them to bolster American ships to defend against British naval forces. As other nations begin toiling with their own portal issues, many countries cede their territories to the United States due to a lack of resources. But as time goes on, some strangers begin to slowly integrate themselves into various societies across the nation. While not unfamiliar with the concept of slavery, the scale is on a completely different level from what those of the portals can remember. Certain races begin to migrate towards states that they hold similar ideologies to. During the Battle of the Alamo, an unknown orc was reported slaughtering dozens of forces on their own. After the battle, the orc's body was never found, leading many to believe they may have been taken prisoner or their body burned by enemy forces. Impressed by the rambunctious and unwavering attitude of the Texans, many orcs found themselves joining in the Texas Revolution for the glory and honor that came with battle. Later, they would become key components in swiftly ending the Mexican-American War. This would lead to a camaraderie between the two groups and a statue commemorating both Davy Crockett and the mysterious orc, known only as the Lone Star. The Trail of Tears was a significant event, as many elves felt a deep kinship with those of the Native American tribes. With their joint fondness of nature and the spirits, the elves were disgusted by the treatment of the natives. Many decide to align themselves with the tribes and maintain traditional native ways on the lands they've occupied for so many generations. With the help of elven power, many Indian tribes are able to keep the states they were sent to relatively free from US influences. This era of integration caused a massive technological advancement around the world. Eventually, it would come to be known as the Age of Miracles. As one would guess, many of the predominantly Christian societies of America looked at portal dwellers as a blight upon the nation. But as magic began to become more rampant in society, various pagan religions grew in popularity in the stretches of the land. Fearing a religious takeover, some Christian groups formed an organization known as the Kingdom of Mercy to bring salvation back to the land, whether it was wanted or not. Their tenets are clear. The emergence of the portals was a direct test from God to see if humans were able to defend their lands from the enemy with holy retribution. While fairly rare even in their original homelands, tieflings became one of the most prosecuted portal races in North America. With their devilish appearances, an emergence of a new witch hunt began to terminate the race from the lands. Religious sects banded together to hunt them down wherever they could be found. That is, until the rise of the Decadent. Their leader, a tiefling who goes by the title Baphomet, made it their goal to protect any strangers from oppression. Rumors have it that they've trekked through the Pharaohs and now reside within the northwestern parts of America. As magic and technology become more prominent, the age of steam and archaeology has entered the fray. During this time, the railroad industry becomes one of the most cutthroat and profitable businesses to be in. But as the United States becomes more known for its innovations, those in the South begin to see a power shift. There are more calls for the abolishment of slavery as the need begins to dwindle. And for a time, it appears as if the cause might be successful, until a group of Southern partisans called the Grey Guard begins to gain traction and rally the South. By standing on the belief that the North are attempting to destroy Southern values by wiping out slavery, the nation slowly begins to descend into chaos. In 1861, the Civil War commences, starting one of the deadliest conflicts the young nation has seen yet. And with the influence of strangers and magic engineering, the war becomes a prolonged battle between the Union and Confederate nation. Many factions will take this time to gain power from the ongoing conflict. The Gilded Partnerships forms as a way for various companies to profit off both sides during the war. With their own private military force and abundance of resources, the Gilded Partnerships supply both sides with the much-needed supplies and mercenary power. But don't take this as an example of them being on friendly terms. There's plenty of corporate espionage and shadowed skirmishes if one cares to take a close enough look. The Ho Chin is a crime family that currently rules the streets of New York with an iron fist. They began as a simple Tong organization, focusing on assisting the families decimated by the work on the railroads. Tensions rose amongst rival Tong groups across the country, as they each vied for control of their respective neighborhoods. As the streets of many Chinatowns across the nation bloodied, a low-ranking member of the Ho Chin slowly made his way to the top. Stumbling upon one of the largest veins of portal lilies the world had seen yet, the young man took America by storm and led the organization to their current prominence. Sherman's March on Georgia was one of the most significant events, as the entire land was enveloped by a newly formed portal, something that hadn't occurred since the beginning of God's expanse. Now, the state has joined the Pharaohs, becoming a breeding ground for all monsters of the night. And that concludes a brief outlook on the current world of the gambler's frontier. Our story takes place in the early 1880s, where magic and technology rule the lands. The Civil War has gone on for years now. With constant death and fighting, the current armistice is one of the few moments of peace the nation has had in quite some time, if only for a moment. The Union is currently led by President Grant, in the South by an individual known as the Old General. But as most people fear, it only takes one bad hand for it all to come crumbling back into war. And should that happen, the last days of this young nation may be sooner than you would think. Well, that's it. That's the video. I didn't cover everything. That was just like general info a farmer or some shit would know. Anyways, I got more in-depth lore and other stuff, but you gotta wait for the actual campaign to see any of that. Please do keep in mind, I'm not like a history buff or anything. If I'm wrong about something, just chop it up to it being some alternate history type of shit. I don't know. Maybe I'll make some more in-depth videos later. Oh, RIP old campaign. Hello, new D&D campaign. Thanks for listening to your local game master, and remember, kids, just because we don't have anything important to talk about doesn't mean the time we spend together isn't meaningful.